Greetings, folks. Good afternoon. Welcome to Part D. D could stand for dog. It could stand for dumb, dumbs, deep underground military bases, or it could stand for the common average man who doesn't want to know anything and just wants to watch his television. Dumb. Or doghouse, which is where we all are as a result of tolerating the dumb people. We're stuck with them. We can't do anything about it. I watched my last video, and that's letter C, if you will. And that queued me up for a lot of things I wanted to mention, but I can't remember them all. Hopefully they have permeated my consciousness. I'm going to start off with telling you that I cannot load up to my other channel. I tried this morning. They gave me a week not being able to upload, and they demonetized it. I never applied for monetization on either channel, on either Awakening Israel or upon this, the Dr. John Taylor Kent, the Dr. Kent Show. If you see commercials here, please report those to me. I don't want to support their beast system. I just don't want to do it. They censored me. They took the show down. They gave me no reason for it. And if they can't do that, then how am I supposed to learn from it? What did I do that was wrong? I'll tell you what I think. I mentioned the Jews, and I actually upset a lot of people because I actually defend the Jews, the good ones, the proper ones, the good figs. And what's wrong with that? I speak out because I'm afraid that people are going to rise up and go after all of them wholesale. I know some pretty marvelous people who have really contributed to this country and continue to do so. I don't want to see them gone. I also read the Bible properly, and I understand that the House of Judah has got some big roles in the future, and there's not going to be that many of them to go back there with us to fulfill those things. And that bothers me. Bothers me immensely. The FBI infiltrated almost every extremist organization in the country, and they did their best to bolster the extremism. They did their best to put out as much hate as they could and divide us as much as they could. The bankers assigned them that task. So you need to understand that the FBI has actually stirred up the whole pot on purpose to divide us and conquer us and to put us at each other's throats. And unfortunately, the left is going to go violent on us, and we will have to defend ourselves. You got to. You can't lay down and take it. They'll kill you. The problem is that these folks that give strikes won't engage in a conversation. They can't stand the truth. And there's a reason for that. And so I'm going to take a chance with identifying them right now. I mean, this is the spirit in which they operate. So you need to understand. I spoke honestly and truthfully to defend peoples at large. I didn't violate any community policies. I think the people at YouTube violated their own policies. You can't pick and choose winners. You have to allow the truth to come forward. So we're going to start and go backwards a little bit in the Bible. John chapter 8. No, this is not Awakening Israel. I can't upload on that. But you folks need to understand, and you need to be able to identify the enemy. So we're going to start with this. We'll go to John chapter 8, verse 44. You are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he stayed not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not, and you censor my ass, right? Which of you convinces me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do you not believe me? He that is of God hears God's words. You therefore hear them not, because you are not of God. All right, folks, we're going to start with an opening scripture, and I pray that I can cover this really good for you. I sat on my ass and I read the Bible. I had an NIV study Bible, 1983, the original one. Subsequent versions have been downgraded. They did a gender-neutral one recently, from my understanding. I haven't seen one yet. I certainly am not going to buy one because it's going to lead to more confusion. That's what they want. These people are the author of confusion. They stir things up and put us at each other's throats. Don't let them do that. And I spoke in defense of a people, the house of Judah in particular. If you want some resources to understand your heritage and to understand who the enemy is, there are books in PDF form that you may download freely on my blog, givingpsychologyaway.com. Go there, and you can download Bertrand Comparet's book. It's pretty short, and the maps in black and white. It's the only place in the entire internet you can get them. The one look at the maps tells the whole story. Bertrand Comparet was an attorney, and he wrote at a very high level. It's above graduate school level. You'll have to read it 2 or 3 times to get it, maybe more than that. Don't be ashamed of it. I think he's got several chapters in there that are going to be of interest to you. Several chapters. And there's another fellow who wrote under a pseudonym. His pen name was Charles Weissman. I don't know his real name. I have friends who knew him and were friends with him, and they described him as a very depressive sort of individual. Well, this man was reading and writing so far ahead of the rest of us that he was by himself. He didn't have much companionship. He lived by himself. All he did was wrote and published books and paid for the printing. Why? Because the evil ones own all the publishers. They don't want the truth out there. They wouldn't publish his books. He had to take care of it himself. And when Charles Weissman passed away, he passed away with cartons of brand new books in his house. And his family thought so highly of him and his work that they carted it all off to the dump. And as a result, they have abandoned his copyrights, rights to which he and his family are entitled to get royalties for 150 years. But because of that, because they trashed his work, it's in the public domain, so I can put it up on my website freely. It's a 200-page book. It'll help you to identify, in part, only part, some of the bad guys. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it, because I don't want to risk another strike. And YouTube, it's not what you think it is. So you folks out there that don't want to communicate with me, fine, then stay ignorant. You'll go down like the fools you are. And you're definitely not of God, because you don't like the truth. You seem to be allergic to it, and you don't want to communicate, and you don't uphold your own community standards. Because I'm speaking in defense of peoples, for the survival of peoples. Plural. You got it? So, why did you give me the strike? Because the Holocaust that you have put forth is not a factual thing that's been proven. It's been disproven. It's never been taken to a court of law. Every time it's been taken to a court of law, they lose ground. Okay. I sat on my butt and I read the Bible, and I figured things out on my own. And what I figured out was that the bad guys that we're dealing with today go all the way back to the time of Joshua, the book of Joshua. What happened in Joshua? In the book of Joshua, Joshua failed to do what God ordered him to do. He failed to do what Yahweh ordered him to do, and the orders were given with good cause and good reason. He failed to kill them all. It wasn't every place that he went into that he was ordered to wipe out everything. There was only a couple of places in particular. And there was good reason for that. So don't you go trying to second guess Yahweh. You need to read the Bible and figure out what was going on. And Joshua failed to kill a lot of them. They escaped and went into the rest of the world, and we're dealing with their children today. Okay? You need to understand that the bad guys know who they are, and they know who we are. But you don't know who they are. And more importantly, you don't know who you are. And because you don't know who you are, you're fighting blind. You have no idea who they are. You want to know who they are? You go download those free PDFs from my blog, givingpsychologyaway.com. You want to know who they are? You read the Bible, the whole doggone thing. Focus on the Old Testament in particular. These New Testament churches only give you 15%. 85% is in the Old Testament, and most of the prophecies that have not been fulfilled yet are in the Old Testament. There have been some problems with the Bible. It has been obscured. One of the biggest obscurations was when Ptolemy II, in about 275 BC, was producing the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Bible. He was overseeing the translating of the Bible. And they took out the proper name of Yahweh, Creator Father, and put in God, the generic category, if you will, for every Yahweh mention, complete. There was good reason to produce a Greek Bible. Most of the Israelites by then were in dispersion. Matter of fact, most of the Israelites were in dispersion about 3 centuries earlier. And so they didn't speak Aramaic. They couldn't read Hebrew. Most people couldn't read anyway. But they weren't even speaking in it. And to make it more accessible, they produced the Septuagint in Greek. And they obscured the proper name of Yahweh. Today we have that corrected in this particular Bible. I don't think you can see that very well. I'll put the light on it. It's not working. The proper name version, and a lot of you people say it's got to be a King James or they don't want anything to do with it. It is the King James Bible. Modern English, and corrected with the proper names of Yahweh and Yahshua in it. And far more accurate than the original King James Bible. And I'm proud to bring it to you, well, to offer it to you. Why? Because my distant relative, distant family member in the past, produced the 1611 King James Bible for his king, King James. He previously worked as an attorney for the Queen, his mother. He could not use the last name Kent. They would have discovered that the Queen was his mother, and they would have had her beheaded back then. His name was Sir Francis Bacon. And William Shakespeare was the front man. William Shakespeare was illiterate. There are only 4 examples of his handwriting in existence, and I think one was an X or 2 were X's, and 1 was a Y. He couldn't even sign his name. What did he do for a living? He was a horse handler. Who was he employed by? He worked as a horse handler on the Kent estate. What is my name? John Taylor Kent. Ph.D. Post-hole digger. Piled high and deep. I don't consider myself educated till I sat on my ass and read the Bible about 3 times. I've read it about a dozen times now. I've read it in the NIV. I've read it in the original King James. I've read it to a certain extent in the New Revised Standard Version. There's some things that I can't stand about that because they really do screw things up in that. And now I've got this version, which actually helps me to understand the original King James much better. And I mean, the assumptions that I've been running around with because of the original Old English and the King James is something else. And in case you're wondering, the syntax is reversed in the Old English. Why is that? It's because of where we came from. The syntax actually mirrors Old Hebrew. It was reverse syntax in that language. Not only that, but the language was reversed. They wrote from right to left, whereas the English, they wrote from left to right. And in case you're wondering where the conversion occurred, there's a name for the pillow stone that forwards and backwards is pronounced the same, said the same, spelled the same. Leafael. That's the nickname for the pillow stone, which has become the coronation stone, which is going to be hauled out pretty soon to crown this king, who is not a member of the tribe of Judah. That family that's been on there is the wrong family. Matter of fact, Princess Diana Spencer had more rights to that throne than any of them had, and they knew it. They were jealous of her because of that. Might have led to them killing her. You want your nation back? I want it back too. You want your republic back? I want it back too. You want your freedom back? I want it back too. You want your money back? I want it back too. You want your property back? I want it back too. You want your estate back? I want it back as well. The problem is we've lost everything through a series of frauds and thievery, theft. It's institutionalized. It's the way of this country at this point. Got people on Facebook saying, let it flood again. Flood it, Lord. Just bring a flood. Do it again. Wipe it all out. They are so tired of things the way they are that they're willing to take their chances drowning with the rest of the rats that are among us. It's pretty bad. But don't worry, you might get your wish, because we just might get the hellfire and brimstone this time. The British Crown has screwed up the world. If China wanted to go to war against England, I'd stand back and say, have at it. I don't care much for them going after the people. But as far as those thieves, those usurpers that have taken that throne go, yeah, I got a problem with that. The real king, the real royalty, is a man alive in Australia today. I think he's still alive. He was a sheep rancher. He loved his life. He didn't want to leave it. When they discovered who he was, tracking him down properly and interviewed him, he said he didn't want to be king. He loved his life the way it was. He didn't want to mess it up. But he also said if they drafted him, if the people demanded him, he would serve. That's the attitude you want. I think the guy would make a really good king. I wish that upon you. I wish you had the rightful heir on the throne. Prince Charles? Good God. I would have never thought. Even his mother said he'd never be king. Oh, my Lord. Bet she's rolled over in her grave a few times knowing that he's going to be king and he's going to mess things up. I watched my video. I'm going to try to do that as much as I can. I've got other things to take care of that I really should be taking care of for myself. I've got a couple irons in the fire that would result in some monies for me that I have coming to me that I want. I want what I got coming and nothing more, but I want what I got coming. And that's a priority, so I'm going to have to get off here. My poor dog got injured. We got vet bills going up. I really wish I'd have taken out the pet insurance, but there were so many different offerings at the time that I couldn't make up my mind, and I forego it. And now I really regret it, because it would have paid for itself easily with this one incident that's ongoing at this point. I have to trank her. She's on tranquilizers. I have to keep her pretty still. She's a puppy. She's not used to this stuff. And I got to get her in for surgery. Probably, maybe today, but probably tomorrow. I have one product for sale, and that's 5 different formats of the proper name version of the King James Bible. It is the best Bible. It's the best Bible since the original one was done. And I'm talking before the Septuagint. I'm talking in the original languages. I disagree with people who say the Bible was written in Greek. I believe it was originally in Aramaic. It could have been in Aramaic with some Greek. That would make sense. Some of it could be Hebrew. That would make sense as well. But it wasn't flat out straight Greek to begin with. The fellows who have taken over the planet and stolen the wealth of the planet also interfered in the publication of the Bibles as best they could. They changed things. They rearranged things. They obscured it as best they could because they wanted to hide their presence from the rest of you. I realized that Joshua failed, and those people were driven into the rest of the world, and I could pretty much track them down. I couldn't connect all of the dots, but they definitely went to Venice. They went to another place in France. That's where Satan moved his seat, his throne, out of Pergamon in the Middle East up to a city in France. Then I think it might have gone to Great Britain, and it's probably in Switzerland now. It's real. However, I couldn't figure it out before Joshua failed to fulfill his orders. I was up in Alaska in the weirdest weather. It was the first of the year, and a warm wind came from the interior through Anchorage and melted everything. The doggone trees were budding out. They were confused. This is the first of the year, 1st of January. HARP was running, and it generated that energy and the winds from the interior that thawed everything out there, and then everything turned to ice. Oh my God, I drove around the block. It was like an ice skating rink. I drove around the block and got back home as fast as I could. I wasn't going out there. Even the school buses were sliding. Nobody was going even 20 miles an hour. I mean, it was just bad. They should have called school off that day, but they didn't. So I went back into my underground garage and parked my Porsche Cayenne Turbo in the heated garage, and just was glad I got off the streets without playing bumper cars with anyone. A fellow I met on Facebook asked me several times, "Are you a believer?" And I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck's with this guy? Am I a believer? And he kept asking me the question. I thought I answered him, but maybe I didn't. And finally, after about the 5th time, I'd had it with him. I said, yes, why do you keep asking? He sends me his phone number, says, call him. We talked. I called him long distance. He was on the border of Ohio. He was a farmer. And I figured a lot of it out on my own. But I didn't understand what happened to Eve. He explained it to me. And I was distraught for the next 2 weeks. I would never have figured that out on my own. He explained it to me with a little colorization to it, a little bit of color because of his own woundedness, what he had been through in his own life. And I was aghast when I realized what had happened to Eve. And then he offered to put me in touch, get me on the pastor's CD ministry. And I'm like, it doesn't cost anything. Okay, fine. So I'm getting CDs mailed up to me in Anchorage from down in Indiana. And I'm listening to this guy, and man, he sounded like a big dude. I mean, he had a good voice. It sounded like he was a big dude. And then my new friend called me up and says, are you ready to talk to Pastor? I'm like, what? What do you mean talk to Pastor? He says, well, yeah, you want to talk to Pastor? I said, nobody talks to pastors. You go to church, you shake hands with them on the way out the door. They don't want to waste time with us. Oh, this one does. And so I called and talked to him for quite a bit. And talked with Jerry. And at that point, I was getting ready to leave and go travel the States. Bought a travel trailer. Was going to anyway at that point. Was looking into them. And decided, well, I want to go meet these people. You know, I mean, I've been listening to the CDs. I want to meet this guy who was larger than life. And I met Jerry. And we're talking. And, of course, a microphone embellishes the voice and gives you a little bit more bottom end, bass end sometimes. And we're talking. And I'm expecting to meet the pastor. And then when he told me he was the pastor, we kept on talking. I'm like, what? He was shorter than I was. I'm not that tall. I'm not no 6-foot guy. You know, I'm average height. Sadly, I'm average height. All these military optics are graduated to my damn height. 5'10". Shit. Oh, my God. So they're going to be able to target me just perfectly because everything's calibrated for a soldier 5'10" tall. And I said to Jerry's a big guy. It was him. It was him. That was wonderful to meet him. I couldn't meet them the first summer because the Porsche people, especially in Boise, didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and they couldn't fix my car, and they treated me horribly. I had a loaner. They were threatening to turn me in for stealing their car because I wouldn't bring it in. I told them my car's not running right, and they insisted there was nothing wrong with it. Well, okay, fine. I give them their car back. I got mine back, and then I made an appointment over in Bend, Oregon. Had to drive all the way over there. I get over there. Their mechanic hops. I guess he hopped in my car right away. He comes back and tells me, your car's not running right. I says, yeah, I know that. I know that. It's overheating. We've got 2 little T-joints on the back of the engine. I've got the parts. You need to replace those. And I said, how do you know it's not running right? He says, I get in every car and I drive it here. He says, your car's not making even 300 horsepower. It was rated to make like 450 or something. He says, there's no power there. It's not running right. And the other guy didn't, you know, all he could do was deride me for the speed I was going. I was trying to show him that the car wasn't working right. And I'm towing a trailer. I need all that power. I need all that torque. There was a wire disconnected. The guy popped the wire back on. He didn't have time to go after the little T-joints. So I had to go right back to Boise and go back to Bend for another appointment to get the work completed because they only scheduled so much time to look at my car. But the mechanic there was top-notch and really good, and he got it all sorted out. I won't own another Porsche, a new one, because of the way they treated me in Boise. And I let Porsche know that, and someday I'll write whoever's in charge of it, and I'm going to tell them, if your mechanics screw up my car, I'm not buying your product again. And the mechanic at Fort Wayne about killed my car, really undermined it. I actually took them to court over that. I lost because my witness backed out on me. But I at least took a stand, and they about destroyed my engine on me. So between those two, I'm not going to buy another one. Now, I can tell you some good dealerships. I've been in a lot of dealerships. Those cars are no fun to maintain. Cost me an average of $1,500 a month, and I still was behind on keeping her on the road. But people would ask me if you could drive any car in the world, what would it be? And I'd laugh. Why are you laughing? Because I'm driving the car. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep driving it. Anyway, my buddy Andy explained to me what happened to Eve. That basically she had been, well, And he views it as an act of prostitution. And he said, well, they don't call it the oldest profession in the world for no reason at all. And I've read the scriptures on my own, and I don't see support for that claim. I think that there'd be better support for she was raped. Probably not forcibly, violently, but seduced and under fraud. The fallen angel who did this fathered Cain. So that's where your bad guys come from. A half-breed, half-fallen angelic DNA, satanic DNA, and the other half Adamic DNA from his mother Eve. And so Cain murdered his half-brother Abel. They had different fathers. And for proof of that, what you need to understand is that according to the old traditions, you had to put up strangers when they were traveling. And of course, the bad guys were doing real bad stuff to the strangers when they were traveling. And those are the same guys we're dealing with today. You also... oh, heck, I lost my train of thought on that. Oh, well. It'll come back. Edwin, as I knew him back then, explained this to me. And I didn't know him well enough to know what he had been through. He went through a horrible divorce in which his wife had an affair with a 15-year-old boy and got pregnant by him. And he wanted her charged for having sex with a minor. The judge wouldn't have anything to do with it. And so his vision was, he was wounded. So his vision was, there was some color to it, if you will. It was discolored. It was not as accurate as it could be because of his woundedness. Now, I understand that. Love him still. He's deceased now. He passed away quite a while ago. More than 7 years ago. Edwin explained it to me, and I had a real rough time stomaching it and tolerating it. And I had trouble supporting it because Eve said, with the help of Yahweh, I've gotten myself a man-child. And basically at that point, Eve was attributing this to Yahweh, thinking she had had sex with Yahweh and had been deceived, and Eve became a deceiver. So she was lying about where this child came from. And in the Old Testament tradition, where I lost my point a little bit ago, the tradition was, at those days, only the oldest son was authorized to make an offering for the whole family. The other children could not do it, just the oldest son, because the oldest was dedicated to the Lord. And so, here we have in the Old Testament, both boys offering the offering to Yahweh. And Yahweh did not did not regard Cain's offering. And Cain was very upset over that. He didn't accept Cain's offering because he was fathered by a fallen angel. And as a result, Cain became envious and jealous, and he murdered his brother Abel in the fields, smashed his brains out with a rock, an assault rock. And the earth received his blood, and the earth, his blood from the earth, cried out to Yahweh. As a result, Cain gets banished from the garden. And remember, your big box church is going to tell you all men came from Adam. That ain't true. You see, in the original Bible, there were different words that were translated man and men for different types of man, different types of men. But they all got translated as the same thing. So basically what we're looking at, there are two warring factions on the planet. There are the sons of Cain, and they're the sons of Abel. Now remember, You've heard that Adam was the first. And so here's Cain complaining to Yahweh about being banished from the Garden of Eden. Where will I go? They'll kill me out there. And as a result, Yahweh put a protective mark on Cain that said, basically it was notice, whoever harms Cain will suffer a sevenfold curse for whatever they do to Cain. It'll be visited upon them sevenfold. And he went out to the land of Nod, east to the land of wanderers. There he took wives from the other groups of people that are called by a different name than Adam. Enosh and Enoshri are those words. And so he had wives. He built cities. It's in the Bible. And he had children. And his children settled the land that became known as the land of Canaan. That's as far as I'm going to go with you. That's a heck of a lot. I'm not assuming you're a Bible reader if you're on this channel. I'm assuming the politics, philosophy, and maybe survival and economics and all that are more important to you than the Bible. Well, you need to know who you are from, what you are. You know, if you're listening to this, you've got to be a descendant of Seth, who was born to Adam and Eve after the death of Abel. So you've got to be a descendant of the same line I come out of. And you need to understand who you are, so that you can understand who the enemy is and why you're targeted. This is the ancient hatred referred to and mentioned throughout the Bible. That ancient hatred. That's what Pastor Wiki said. And I agree. This is the ancient hatred, and they are intending upon genociding us. And in case you're wondering, it's not all the people of the world that are on the other side. But the other side is throwing all the people of the world against us. That's why you have them doing hate speech. And what is their hate speech? They hate whites. I don't like the term white. I like the term Caucasian. Caucasoid. Why? Because when you understand you're a Caucasian, you'll realize that you were named. You know why you're called Caucasian? You don't know. You're named after the Caucasus, the Caucasus mountain range, because our ancestors migrated through a pass there in approximately 650 BC. It's the Darrell Pass, which was also nicknamed the Gates of Israel. Generally speaking, our ancestors bolted across that in 3 giant migrations. That's why you're called Caucasian. Now, Alaska will not allow me to endorse being a Caucasian on any of my identifications. They insist that I have to call myself a white man. Why is that? What's the purpose of that? Isn't that racist? I mean, isn't that not being colorblind? Yeah. The main reason is they don't want you to know where you come from. They don't want you to know how you got your name, Caucasian. And they, above all, do not want you to ask the logical question. The very next question is, gee, we come across the Caucasus Mountain Range. Where did we come from? Why don't they want you to know that? Because they want you to believe that the 10 tribes of Israel, the house of Israel, the northern half of Israel, were lost. They certainly aren't lost to Yahweh. And welcome to Dr. Kent's show, and check me out on Awakening Israel. I think today is my last day I can't upload. Of course, they may find something wrong with what I'm talking about here and take me down completely. I just don't know. I think it would be a mistake, because I actually point out things that help the bad guys to give up their bad ways. The problem is they got themselves boxed in. People are discovering them rather rapidly. They're looking for a way out, according to my older brother, who's read the Bible more than I have. I think that's enough information for one day. Like this video. Leave a comment. Clarify things. Ask questions. Give me some direction you want me to go in. Tell me something you want me to address and talk about. We were mentioned this country, America, with our several states and republics, each state was an independent republic, independent nation, were mentioned in the Bible in the book of Genesis. It's easier to do it in the old English King James Version than the new one, I admit that. We are the great nation that was foretold by Israel the man on his deathbed at the end of the book of Genesis. And our brother became a company of nations. And so that was Ephraim. The older brother became the company of nations, Great Britain, and the younger brother got the seed blessing and became the great nation. And another meaning of the name Manasseh is forgetfulness, amnesia. And we have been sentenced to amnesia as a result of our sins against Creator Father God Yahweh when we were in the northern half of Israel. And so we no longer were called by the name of our father Israel, but by the name of his father, Isaac. Saxons. These are generalizations. There are exceptions to these rules. There are other groups that did other things, that got to other places, that migrated at different times. You need to tune into the other channel for that stuff. Here, I want to talk about restoring our republic, recovering our republic, about our salvation, about our ability to exist, to avoid the genocide that's being attempted upon us. Right now, our entire government is turned against us. They're looking everywhere they can for white supremacism, and they can't find it, so they've been inventing it. There's only one supremacism on the planet, and I'm not going to name it because they may find that offensive. But Dr. David Duke wrote about that. He wrote a book about that. So go get his book or look him up and see what he wrote, and you can find the group of supremacists that are on the planet that run it today. That's probably as close as I want to get to that. If you turn to Yahweh, he will turn to you. You can't get out of this trap. The enemy was given license to sift us. That's their job, to tempt us, to test us, to try us. The problem is they've clearly exceeded their license. They weren't given a license to go genociding us. Then again, maybe they were. Go read the Bible for yourself. This will be laid out in the first 5 books. Okay, in the Old Torah. Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Exodus. Those are all important books for you. You need to learn what the 10 Commandments were, what the blessings for obedience are, and what the curses for disobedience are. That's all I got for you today, folks. And this is part D for D.U.M.B.S, deep underground military bases that were built with the idea that they were going to survive this coming Earth age. But because Richard M. Nixon, by executive order, ordered the CIA to hide all of the science and not let anybody discover about this stuff, they failed to consult the scientific community at large. They acted therefore, they acted upon their limited knowledge, and they chose the wrong places to build those things. And they invested as much money underground or more than what they put in above ground. So all that money that they've fabricated, that they've counterfeited, that's gone to building that stuff underground and setting all this stuff up. And it's not going anywhere. Why? Because they built them in the wrong places. Those things are going to be buried under tons of ice, maybe even miles of ice and snow. You see, the end of an Earth age is marked by a brief glacial period. And you are going to want all of the fuel you can to stay warm and survive through that period, because it is going to get really cold. Really cold. I hope I've helped you to understand things here. I hope you understand the big fight that you're in. the fight for survival. I hope you'll understand that I can't explain this one enough, but I'll do the next video on this if I can remember. And that is that Yahweh does not bless rebellion. So you don't want to do a civil war, violent thing here. You want to do a very civic kind of war. You want to let Yahweh do the fighting. You want to turn to Yahweh. You were designed to be in relationship with Yahweh constantly, but most of you don't even know his name. And you were designed to rule with Yahweh, provided you're in relationship with Yahweh and you're doing Yahweh's will. You read the Bible, it'll speak to you differently than it speaks to me. It'll tell you what you need to do. You will tune in to that higher power, if you will, and you will know the best decision for you. So pray to Yahweh that you may know his will for your life, and pray to Yahweh that he will give you the fortitude so you can follow through and provide you with the resources so you can make the right choices. After all, that's what Yeshua, the Messiah, who you call Jesus Christ in great error, that's what he said he did. He didn't do anything outside of Yahweh's will. He did everything according to Yahweh's will. Even that crucifixion was on time, on schedule. Just like these earth ages are on time and on schedule. About every 12,068 years. And Noah's flood was 6,000 years ago. So there are cycles in the meantime. Yahweh bless. May you bless Yahweh. Get a hold of a copy of my Bible. Read it for the stories. Just enjoy it. Push your way through it. You come to something boring, skip over it. Glance over it. Push your way through it. Just go on to some other part of the Bible. There's plenty more to read. And focus on whatever appeals to you. The Spirit will guide you when you're reading. And when you get to know more, you're going to want to look at those boring passages of genealogies and all those things, because those open things up to you even deeper. Well, folks, that's it for the Dr. Kent Show today. This was part D, letter D, and we're all in the doghouse together. We're all in the same ditch together. This government has put us in the ditch. This president has put us in the ditch. And remember this above all, ditch Mitch. The guy is a treasonous, traitorous, rat bastard. He claims the most important thing to us is the war in Ukraine, and he has screwed us up. He is and we've got troops over there fighting. Have been over there the whole time fighting. And I don't want to sacrifice our boys at all. I don't want to compromise them at all. But these people in D.C., these rat bastard assholes, have got to be yanked out of office. Mitch needs to be pulled out above all. He's even a traitor to his own party, the Republican Party. He undermined them greatly this last election. Could have had the whole Senate this time. Easy. And he wanted to screw it up because he didn't want to be in power. What was that? How much dope did they find on one of his ships, or some ship that he owned interest in it? 90 pounds? Was it heroin? 90 kilos? Ditch Mitch. Ditch Mitch. Pray to Yahweh. That's it. Over and out.